I'm not sure if there's anything I can say about Andrés Segovia that hasn't been said already. His career accomplishments span 7 decades, and he played in literally every major venue in the world. Thanks to his great achievements, the Spanish guitar finally found the place of prestige as a concert instrument that his predecessors had worked so hard for. When Segovia was born, there were no major music academies that would teach guitar. Yet, by the time of his death, every conservatory and university's music department had a guitar class. When he passed in 1987, he had been already a legend for many years. So, today I want to focus in a different aspect of his career, which is his first guitar. What we call nowadays classical guitar is mainly a derivative of the Spanish guitar, but that was not the case in the 19th century. Throughout Europe, there were several schools of guitar making, like the French, the Italian, or the German. Segovia's guitar was very different from those used by the great masters of the 19th century, such as Sor or Giuliani. And even in Spain, the one used by Dionisio Aguado was quite different than the guitar we use nowadays. By the mid-19th century, the guitars made by Antonio de Torres, which introduced several innovations, became the most sought after by the finest Spanish guitarists of their time, such as Julián Arcas, Francisco Tárrega, Miguel Llobet, or Federico Cano. They also became the model for other guitar makers, such as Enrique García or Manuel Ramírez, who were favored by the next generations of guitar players and luthiers. We can define periods on Segovia's career according to the guitars he used. The first part of Segovia's career, between 1913 and 1937, marks his permanent ascension as a figure on the classical music scene all around the world, giving concerts in places as far away as Buenos Aires, Moscow, or New York. I've never had the pleasure to be in Moscow, but I cherish the memories of having been in the place in which Segovia played his first ever concert outside Spain, the Salón La Argentina in Buenos Aires, and where he had his New York debut, the Town Hall Theater. When Segovia arrived for the first time in Madrid, he had a modest guitar built in Granada by Benito Ferrer, and he wanted to secure a better one for his upcoming debut in Madrid. That's when a very famous anecdote on Segovia's life happened. Segovia went to the workshop of Manuel Ramírez looking to rent a guitar. This was the best idea Segovia could come up with because he had no money to buy one. Ramírez seemed to be flattered by the proposal and gave Segovia one of his guitars for him to test it. That guitar had been built by Ramírez's most important employee, Santos Hernández, and it was originally made by Antonio Jiménez Manjón, a famous guitarist of his time who died in Buenos Aires, in which he was settled. Manjón was famous for using 11-string guitars. So he ordered one from Ramírez, but for some reason they didn't agree on the sale, and Ramírez modified the guitar to be a regular 6-string. In this photograph, you can see how there is a field peg hole, indicating that this was a bigger head, probably reshaped, and in which the wooden pegs were replaced by mechanical ones. When Segovia started playing, everybody in the workshop was amazed by him. We can only imagine the impact of hearing Segovia for the first time in 1913. I let Segovia himself tell this moving anecdote of his young years.
My first acquaintance with Ramirez, Manuel Ramirez, was in the 1912 when I came for the first time to Madrid. I went to his shop, but I was dressing in very extravagant way. I had a big tie, cascade of tie, and then a gilet, a vest of velour, and very long hair, very curious hat, and finally a very good stick to defend my appearance. In that way, I entered the shop of Ramirez. Ramirez took a look at me and began to smile, and I was a little upset. But little by little, we became friends, and he showed me the one guitar that I found marvelous. It is too long to say all the details of that moment, but after I played and played and played, he took the guitar and he told me, "I give you this guitar, my boy." I answered with a gesture indicating that I had no money for paying this guitar, the price of the guitar. And then he told me, "Pay me the guitar without money, but by making it famous all over the world."
With this guitar, Segovia's career had a meteoric rise, and he became the number one figure in classical guitar that he was by 1940. Several guitar makers made copies of this guitar. The first one was the Swiss violin maker Pierre Bidoudès. But the most important was Hermann Hauser, who was already an established guitar maker, but he was making guitars in the old Viennese style. He then began to admire Spanish guitars, especially after meeting Segovia and Miguel Llobet. I let Segovia once again explain himself the story of his meeting with Hauser in this interview he had with the BBC, one of my favorite videos of Segovia available on the internet. I leave the full video in a link and on my blog's version of this story if you want to check it out.
I invited him to come to my hotel and to examine the guitar I had at that time, which was Spanish. And he did. And he did with such stubbornness and tenacity that he spent about 3 hours taking measurement and everything that could help him. 1 year later, he sent me to Switzerland, where I used to live at that time. A guitar which was exactly like my own, reflected in a mirror, but without soul. I mean, without the quality of voices and the volume that I require. After a while, I sent back the guitar to him, congratulating him and telling him to persevere. And he did. Every year since, he kept sending me to Switzerland 1 or 2 guitars which were every time better than the previous one. And finally, in the 1936, he sent me this one, which is the best guitar in the world.
The Hauser family is still today one of the most respected in classical guitar making, crafting guitars in the style that Hermann Hauser I learned from the Spanish masters. By the way, the Ramirez guitar also cemented Santos Hernandez's fame as a guitar builder. Manuel Ramirez died in 1916, and Santos took over his workshop, creating guitars for the most important players of his time. He made several repairs here and there on Segovia's guitar, and he got Segovia to let him paste his own label on the guitar. The friendship between both artists ended when Segovia started using the Hauser, or probably a little before, when Santos realized that the original tuning machine had been replaced, probably as a repair. You can see how the tuning machine, still present today on the guitar, is identical to those used by Hauser on his guitars. As you can see, this guitar was the protagonist of a lot of key moments in guitar history. Fulfilling Segovia's wish, both the Ramirez and the Hauser are exhibited at the Metropolitan Museum in New York.
So here am I with the famous 1913 Manuel Ramirez guitar, who belonged to Andrés Segovia. It's so amazing to be here and to be able to connect with this great piece of history. And besides, there is the 1940 Hermann Hauser, which it's sort of a very, very inspired. You can see they look very much alike. This other guitar belonged to Julian Bream, and from this guitar, Jose Romanillos made, I think, 3 copies, and one of them became the main guitar that Julian Bream used for like 2 or 3 decades of his career. It's amazing to see the Ramirez. It looks a lot worn out. There is cracks beside the fretboard, and there is 3 cracks below the bridge, and it still has the headstock installed by Hermann Hauser, which allegedly caused the breakup of the relationship between Santos Hernandez, the builder of this guitar, and Andrés Segovia.
Segovia's next stage in his life was the most triumphant one, with his Hauser guitar, with which he made his most famous concerts and albums. He used the Hauser until it became irreparably damaged in 1956, also due to the difficult conditions it was put through after many years of touring around the world. But that is another story, I guess. This guitar, the Ramirez, marks the triumph of the Spanish guitar all over the world, as well as Segovia's. It was Segovia's wish that nobody would play these 2 guitars again, so I won't be able to show you a modern recording of them. But I was able to get a very good taste of the sound of Manuel Ramirez guitars of that time, because a friend of my family owned a 1908 guitar which came out of the same workshop of the Calle de Arlabán. So I leave you with some footage of a concert I gave at the Andrés Segovia Museum at Linares, Spain. I not only had the privilege of playing that guitar in the concert, thanks to the owner, who generously lent it to me, but I did it in the town in which Segovia himself was born. And I got to meet Mr. Alberto López Poveda, who wrote the most extensive Segovia biography there is, and was the head of the museum until his death. He passed away shortly after I met him in 2014 at over 90 years of age. I played, among other pieces, Segovia's Estudios sin Luz, just a few steps away from the crypt in which Segovia's body is resting for eternity, together with his invaluable legacy for the guitar and arts. There's quite some meaningful details I didn't include in this video to keep it concise. So if you know some of them, make sure to write them on the comment section down below. And if you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing to get more content about guitar and music. I'm Alejo de los Reyes. I'll see you in the next one.